Over the next few minutes, I'll go through the features of vFactory. I'll show you everything you need to know to start making your own user controls. To use vFactory, you'll need an ACE or branch PLC that's already been programmed. This is because vFactory gathers tags from your PLC to create its controls. So let's first create a simple program in vBuilder. We won't actually create any logic, we'll just add some tags that we'll use in our controls. So we'll create a new project, just leave it with a default name. And we'll do the auto setup and just leave the default settings. Now we'll take a look at the tags. Something to note is every time you create a new project, there's a tag by the name of vFactory page that's automatically created for you. And we'll talk about this later when we actually go to vFactory. For right now, we're going to create a few tags. We'll create one called MyBit. And we'll make it remote writable. And what remote writable does is it tells the PLC that vFactory is allowed to adjust its data. It's allowed to change the value of this tag. If you don't have that checked, then vFactory is not allowed to change the value. It can only read it. And in our examples, we want to make them remote writable. We'll add a couple more tags. And we'll make both of them remote writable as well. Okay. And at this point, you'd normally go ahead and you'd use your tools and you'd drag them onto your grid, and you'd make your logic that would actually execute whatever program you want. But like I mentioned before, we're not going to go ahead and do that. We just need some tag names for this example. So we'll program it and tell it to run. And that's all we need vBuilder for this. So we'll close it out and we'll open up vFactory. Okay, first thing we do is we create a new project. And we'll just call it demo. And once you've done that, you can see that all your controls become available. So these are the graphs, and these are how you view data, and these are how you adjust data. And if you want to be able to adjust data, like I mentioned before, make sure that you've declared it as remote writable inside of vBuilder. So we'll start out and we'll change the value of one of those tags that we created. We'll use my i32 for this. We'll tell it it's got a range of 0 to 100. And we'll use one of these display number tools to see what the current value is. It's got some other options here. You can see you can format how the text is laid out, and you could treat it like a time in case you in vBuilder were using a timer. That would be useful. But for this example, we'll just leave it left aligned and displayed as number. Right now we're in the edit mode, which allows us to drop controls onto the grid, as well as move them around and adjust their size, that sort of thing. What I can do now is switch it over to run mode, and what that does is it gets live data from the PLC, and it also allows us to update the value of those tags. So as we're doing this, the PLC is being sent a message to change the value to whatever we've selected here, and then we're getting the data back from the PLC. So we know this is the data that's actually inside the PLC right now. We can use maybe a graph and display the same data a little bit differently. So we're using my i32 still, and we'll say from a range of 0 to 40, we'll say that's should look blue, and from 40 to 60, we'll make that green, and 60 to 100, we'll make that red. Okay, and we'll hit run again, and you can see it's the same data, it's just another way to present it. And we can do this with another graph maybe. This one is data over time. It's called a line graph, and we'll give it the same range. And since we want to be able to see rapidly what's going on, we'll just set it for 1 minute of data. And you can see it popping up right here. It's right around the 48 area, and as we increase the number or decrease it, we can see how it affects the line as it's being drawn. some other tools here, other ways to adjust data. We'll use this one's called radio buttons, and what you do is you select the tag that you're wanting to affect, and then you give it different values. So maybe I'll make this a 10, and since this is a float, it can have decimal points, so we'll say 42.65 and 80 and 100, something like that. And then over here are labels, and that's whatever text is going to show next to each button. So for the most part, we'll make it what the values themselves are, just for our own reference. And we'll put one of these display numbers right here, so we can verify what the actual values are. So as we click on this, you can see the data for that float is being updated. Both of these graph tools allow you to have to display up to 6 pieces of data at the same time. So we'll do a little example with that, and we'll take both the my I32 and the my float value, and we'll show both of those at the same time in a grid, or in a graph rather. So you see those, they're both being represented here. All of these you can see by hovering over basically what they do, and I'm not going to go into each of them, but I'll show you one more example. We'll change a bit value. We'll use a slider, or an on-off rather. We created one bit named myBit, and we'll use that. And then this is a light. And what a light does, you select the bit you want to work with. And when it's off, it's white. And then when it's on, it's whatever color you selected. So that's the basic gist for these controls. All the ones that I didn't go into respond very similar. I'll go over label as well. Label is just a way to put a piece of text. It's not actually tied to any tag, so it's a little bit different than the others. But that's the only difference there. So those are how the controls work. There's one other big concept in vFactory, and that is pages. So we've drawn all these controls on one page, the default page, which is home. But you are able to create additional pages, and on those you can put whatever data you want on it. So we'll do the same bit, for instance, as a light on a different page, and you can see it's on here, so it'll be on that page as well. And if I turn it off on this page, it'll be off there as well, because it's the same piece of data. And then this is a clear page. We haven't done anything with it. So you can switch between pages. And these pages, they are controlled by a tag that I mentioned briefly when we were in VBuilder. It's this vFactory page that was automatically created when you create a new project. You don't have to use that, but you're allowed to use any I32, or rather any integer at all, actually. But I rarely change it from its default. Typically, I just use the vFactory page. But it's when you're pressing these buttons, you're actually changing the value of vFactory page to whatever this number is to the right here. So by clicking here, it's putting a 1 into it, and by clicking here, it's putting 2 into it. Another way you could do this sort of thing is you could create maybe a button tied to vFactory page, and you could maybe put a 1 in that, and say page 1. And then maybe on the next page, we just want to loop it back to page 1. Or to page 0, rather. And when we hit run here, you'll see I can push the page 1, it changes the variable there, and we go to the other page. And doing much the same way here, inside of VBuilder, you can flip the pages on this vFactory, doing a very similar thing. You just write to the vFactory page tag, or whichever tag you're using here. You just write to it, and you can effectively programmatically change the page. So maybe you've got some situation where you're wanting to alert the user of the control panel kind of what's going on. You just have your logic update the value of vFactory page, and it'll jump to whatever page you want. So that's the basics, the controls and the pages for vFactory. A couple little things here. You can move a page up or down, and you can see its value here. It changes. If you slowly double click, you can update. You can give it a new name, that sort of thing, and you're able to delete or add pages that way. So that's all for this. We'll just go ahead and make sure you save at the end of your project. And going to close out of this, and we'll show you one more thing. vFactory gives you full control on editing each of those pages, but maybe you've got users of your you want users to interact with the pages that you did or you created, but you don't want them to have the ability to change those pages. We offer vFactory Viewer, and it's everything about vFactory, just they aren't allowed. You see there's no controls up here. You can't switch between run and edit mode. It's just stuck in run mode basically, and that you can pass along to somebody that you want them to interact with it, but you don't want them to be able to adjust the pages themselves. So that's available, and otherwise it runs exactly like vFactory. So that's all, and I think you've got enough info to get yourself started, and let us know if you have any questions. Thanks.